I'd like to call the meeting to order of the Wilmington City Council. I'd like to welcome all those who are with us here this evening and all those who are watching us home on TV. Thank you for taking interest in your government. At this time, I'd like to introduce Chaplain Joshua Lee of the Wilmington Police Department for their invocation. If everyone will stand and remain standing afterwards for the Pledge of Allegiance. Chaplain, welcome.
Let us pray. Father, we just thank you, Lord, for this evening to be able to gather together, Lord, to do business. And God, we ask, Lord, that today here, a day removed from this storm that's moved through our area, God, we ask, Lord, that you would be with these folks who have been affected by this massive amount of rain, Lord, in these last 24 hours. God, for those who have lost their homes and their vehicles and their possessions, Lord, God, we ask that you would give it back to them. But Father God, we thank you, Lord, that you've preserved their lives. So, Lord, today, as we've all gathered here, Lord, we ask, God, that you would be honored and you be glorified. We ask these things in your Son's name, Jesus, our Lord and Savior. Amen.
Amen. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have one presentation this evening, and at this time I'd like to recognize Sergeant Melvin, the Wilmington Police Department, and this will be a proclamation naming the week of September 15th through the 22nd, 2024 as National Forensic Science Week. If you'll meet me up front. National Forensic Science Week, September 15th through the 22nd, 2024. Whereas forensic science is a vital public service, and whereas access to quality forensic analysis dramatically improves the investigation of criminal activity leading to the exoneration of the innocent and the prosecution of the guilty. And whereas forensic science plays a critical role in public outreach and crime prevention and is evolving in its role as an important member of the criminal justice community. And whereas crime scene investigators, forensic examiners, and forensic scientists provide unbiased, accurate, and reliable analysis of evidence recovered from across the nation. And whereas numerous professional organizations have recognized September the 15th through the 22nd, 2024 as National Forensic Science Week, and whereas the hardworking people that compose our forensic science organizations deserve universal regard and appreciation for their commitment to proper scientific investigation for the cause of justice. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Mayor Bill Safford, on behalf of the Wilmington City Council, proclaim September the 15th to the 22nd, 2024 to be Forensic Science Week in Wilmington, North Carolina, the 17th day of September 2024. And I just want to say thank you to everybody on this team that does such a phenomenal job in solving a tremendous amount of crimes using forensic analysis. I think the public would be surprised at how much work and goes into this and the dedication of the men and women of the Wilmington Police Department for this particular forensic science stuff that you folks do. It's so dramatic. So at this time, I'd like to turn it over to Kim, one of our crime scene technicians. Kim?
Right. Hello, thank you for allowing us to come up here and to be recognized. National Forensic Science Week is celebrated nationwide, and it's just celebrating the forensic community and everything that we do, and all of our efforts to help with agencies that we all work for. Of course, us here at Wilmington PD, and then all agencies across the nation that are celebrating with us.
Thank you so much. Right. Thank you for all your public service to this great community. Thank you. Let's take a picture right here. Come on, guys. Come on in the place. Brings us to our next item of business, which is our consent agenda. We have 7 items. Does any of the council members have any item they'd like to pull separately? If not, what are the wishes of council in respect to the consent agenda? We have a motion to approve by Councilmember Andrews, second by Mayor Pro Tem Barnett. Discussion. All in favor of that motion, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Item passes unanimously. That brings us to our next item of business, which is our public information segment. We have 5 speakers that have signed up to speak with us this evening. Each speaker will be allotted 5 minutes. Our city clerk will be keeping the time as your name is called. Our first speaker is Mr. John Martell, who will be speaking to us about health care quality in the Lower Cape Fear. Mr. Martell, welcome.
Good evening, Mayor Saffo and members of the council. Thank you for granting me some time this evening to talk about a matter of great concern. I am a physician, actually, and a retired chief medical officer from a small hospital. And I want to talk to you about the fact that New Hanover Regional Medical Center is rated as a 2-star hospital by Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Service. That puts it in the lower 30% of quality of care for hospitals nationwide. If that hasn't gotten your attention, I truly believe it should. That the Regional Medical Center is an 850-bed hospital located here in the city of Wilmington. It is the only tertiary care hospital within the Lower Cape Fear region. We do not have a Hospital B to go to for things like complex cardiac problems, neurologic problems. This is our hospital. When the hospital was sold to Novant in 2021, in that contract, the asset purchase agreement, there were statements that the hospital would take every reasonable step possible to bring the hospital up to the top 10% nationwide. We aren't there yet. Not only are we not there yet, we have not had from the hospital a reasonable, articulated plan of how they intend to get to the top percent. Nor do we have any feel as citizens of this city and county of what their benchmarks are for quality, how they're going to map their road forward. Basically, what is happening in the hospital to improve their quality of care is invisible to us. Now, keep in mind that a 2-star rating for a hospital is not like a Yelp rating. It's not you go and you have poor service, but it's no big deal and you'll never go back there again. The measure of a 2-star hospital is in suffering and death. Let me give you a couple examples, and this all comes from Medicare. This is all validated data. And if you have complications from a surgical procedure while you are at New Hanover Regional, you are 20% more likely to die of that complication than if you had gotten that same care in Chapel Hill. If you have coronary artery bypass surgery at New Hanover, according to Medicare data, you are 20% more likely to die than if you had that surgery at Duke. If you have a severe infection at New Hanover Regional, it's something called sepsis. It's life-threatening. It requires immediate attention. You are likely to get appropriate care 46% of the time as opposed to a national average of 60% of the time. And this is affecting you, it's affecting your neighbors, It's affecting your family. My family now has a plan in place that if anybody gets seriously ill here, we will have a go bag and we will get them to Duke or UNC if it is at all feasible to do so. If this has not had your attention before, this matter needs your attention now. And what I am advocating for in the community, along with educating people as to their choices and what their rights are, what I'm advocating for is clarity and accountability. I would like New Hanover Regional Medical Center to provide us with a clear statement of what their plan is to get the quality better, what assets they are allocating to do this, what their benchmarks are, how they're going to get there, what consultants they use. This is vital information for us, and we deserve it, okay? We need that information to know where we're going and how we're going to get there. Any questions?
I'd just like to ask, Dr. Martel, have you shared your comments that you've shared with us this evening with our county commissioners?
I have, and I've met with a couple of them. I hope to be able to meet with a couple more of them. Because the contract was between Novant and the county commissioners, I somehow feel that they should be the lead in this. However, this is our city. Sure. This is the citizens of our city. We cannot abrogate that responsibility.
Understand. And the other thing that I'd like to ask is, prior to the sale of the hospital to Novant, when it was still under county control, what was the rating according to Medicare at that time? Was it the same or was it better?
That I have not yet been able to pull the historic data. The accounts I have from the folks who were working at the hospital at that time, interviews I've done, is that right immediately prior to the sale, it was at a 2-star rating, but had been more highly rated for quality earlier than that. I can't swear on that because I haven't done the research, but that's my understanding.
That's fine. I just, your concerns are valued, and we've heard from other people in the community, not just yourself. I personally have heard from several people in the community in respect to the care that they have received. And our intention, or my intention, is to share some of this information with our local county commissioners, who I believe are very sensitive to these kinds of issues. And I will do whatever I can on my end, but I agree with you wholeheartedly that medical care in this community has got to improve based on the comments that we have heard over and over again from people that have had experiences at New Hanover. So I thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Yeah, I would. The mayor asked my question, but I would suggest that you make the same public information session to the New Hanover County Commissioners, not just meet them individually, but in front of an audience, so it can be documented. Because I agree. I think we all can tell the difference in what's taking place now and what was taking place before. It feels really bad.
Thank you for that. I actually did make public comments in front of the county commissioner at their meeting earlier this month, and I'm working on a proposal for a resolution to bring to them regarding the transparency of the quality information, and any support I can get from any of you in that journey, it would be greatly appreciated. I have reached out to you by letter previously and by email. I will reach back out. I would love to talk to any of you.
Yes, sir. What's, hold on.
I wouldn't stop at the county commission. I'd be in front of the board of trustees. That's a public board.
Understood. I just haven't figured out how to access them yet, so I will get there.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Our next speaker is Ms. Katrina Wojciechowski. think I pronounced. Is Ms. Katrina there? Okay. Next speaker is Mr. Joseph Apicarian. Joseph Apicarian. Okay. Fourth speaker is Mr. David Braga. He'll be speaking to us about ceasefire resolution in Palestine.
Hello. I came to City Council to speak in favor of passing a resolution calling for a ceasefire in Palestine back in the spring. At that point in time, the number of dead, especially among children, was already staggering. Since then, as you well know, the situation has only deteriorated. Famine is widespread, safe zones and shelters are routinely targeted, polio has reemerged, settler violence in the West Bank, an area that had no role in the October 7th attacks, has increased. The Lancet, perhaps one of the best regarded medical journals in the country, estimated that the actual death toll from Israel's war on Gaza is likely between 80,000 and 180,000. That was an estimate they made in July. For context, a 2023 estimate of the population of our city of Wilmington, just the city, not the surrounding area, came in at a little over 122,000. In the time since my last speech, just as in the period before it, you've heard from a broad coalition of individuals asking you to take up this resolution. We are not a monolithic group. We come from a multitude of backgrounds, we have different faiths and different political beliefs. We are young and old. We are all here because we want you to do what we think is a very reasonable thing. We want you to do your jobs. Much has been made about whether or not a ceasefire counts as city business. As more than 200 other city councils across the country have passed them, as your own constituents have routinely appeared at city council to speak both in favor of and against this resolution, as our status as a port city that is likely shipping weaponry overseas, as taxpayers who would like their money to go to better schools or city transit or health care instead of melting children, I cannot see how this is not a city issue. But even beyond that, as human beings, we are all called to account. You are called to account. You all willingly ran for city council. You put yourself in the position of a local politician. Did you not think that at some point you might not have to make a political decision? Some of you have been communicative to our coalition, and that is and will continue to be appreciated. But after almost a year of genocide, I have to ask you, what else do you need? What testimony are you waiting on that's going to change your mind and take up this resolution? Do you have a magic number of hospitals that need to be attacked before you make up your mind? Is another 2,000-pound American-made bomb going to need to fall on a refugee camp, melting tent vinyl to skin for you to be moved? If the next dead child is the tipping point, I have to inform you that while we've been sitting here, we've likely tipped. We are not asking for anything extreme. The text of our resolution is clear in calling for just two things: the current administration facilitating a ceasefire and immediately working to get humanitarian aid into both North and South Gaza. Our resolution has steadfast language condemning both anti-Semitism and Islamophobia. We want the killing to stop, and as our city representatives, you are the voice we are able to appeal to state that intention. I assume by now that you are tired of hearing from us. Many of us are quite tired as well. I would much rather be home with my wife and son right now. We would all rather be out with friends or family in this city that we love and live in. We are here because our basic conscience as humans demands that we be. We want it known that our city, Wilmington, North Carolina, does not condone the continued American involvement in this massacre. We want it known that our city, like hundreds of others, wants a ceasefire. Decades ago, a resolution came before this city council urging it to condemn South African apartheid and to urge the US government to enact economic sanctions on South Africa. It failed. While the majority of the global community put pressure on South Africa, the United States' reluctance and refusal to do so likely enabled apartheid to continue until its eventual collapse. The names of those city council members, the three who voted it down, are three people who, with that small amount of power available to them, refused to call what was clearly wrong, wrong, are written down for all to see. Your names, too, are written down. If you oppose this resolution, put your name on it. If you support it but are wary of backlash, be brave. We are all aware of the risk we are taking by speaking out on this issue. Given the recent crackdown on pro-Palestinian and anti-Zionist speech across campuses nationwide, I, as an English professor, am well aware that this could, in a quick flip of circumstances as soon as the election, lead to me being out of a job. But I cannot be silent while children are killed with wanton violence, while prisoners are recorded being sexually assaulted for the entire world to see, where neither political party in my country values the lives of those it continues to help kill. Enough is enough. Take up this resolution. State where you stand. If you cannot support a ceasefire, at least stop hiding behind feigned ignorance or political cowardice. You chose to run for these seats. You have seen what the rest of us and the rest of the world has seen happening in Palestine. Take a vote. Are there any questions?
Thank you, sir.
That's a no? Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. Next speaker is Ms. Hiba Yunus, talking about divisiveness over killing children with our money.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
My name is Hiba Yunus. I'm Palestinian, I'm American, I'm your constituent, and you are complicit in the genocide of my people. You are complicit in the murder of my family, in the tortured death of our children. You also happen to be my city representatives. So I decided to show up this evening because I feel that my mere existence in a city whose council members are intent on my annihilation is in and of itself an act of resistance and affirming of my dignity as a human being, and maybe yours too. Your silence in the face of genocidal complicity reminds me of a quote by James Baldwin, the brilliant American author and civil rights activist. People who shut their eyes to reality simply invite their own destruction. And anyone who insists on remaining in a state of innocence long after that innocence is dead turns himself into a monster. You are far from innocent. You are complicit in genocide. And as such, you're making the over 130,000 people you represent in this city complicit with you. I have a genuine question for you. If there's time at the end, please answer it. Why do you think the lives of my family and I matter less than yours? What is it? My family, my children, my elderly parents, why do you think it's okay for you to use your bombs, your money, your port to murder my children? Wilmington's taxpayer money is not miraculously exempt from the over $300 billion of arms the US has supplied to Israel over the years, for its Zionist soldiers to make telegram videos of themselves laughing maniacally while murdering Palestinian children and raping our prisoners. As far back as April, Port City Daily reported that trade statistics compiled on Wilmington's port shipments showed that the most exported commodity was explosive ammunition and its top destination to be Israel. The country received 70% of the export that came from Wilmington. This is a city issue. We have no reason to believe those statistics have changed today. Your willingness to keep funding and supporting the ongoing murder of our children is your blanket endorsement of murdering children, period. How have you decided that you have a right to rob our world of these lives? In this moment, leadership demands transparency and moral clarity. When it comes to the ongoing slaughter of tens of thousands of children with our money, our weapons, our port, over the course of a full year, silence is not moral clarity. Silence is complicity. Moral clarity is also not wondering what the argument for murdering tens of thousands of children is, wasting even more of our time and resources as the number of unalived children piles up by the hour. On your watch. Moral clarity is using everything within your power, in your relative positions of power over us, to stop Wilmington's complicity in the murders of our children. And your constituents continue to demand that moral clarity and that courage. So what's stopping you? In trying to understand, some friends and I found that the history of Wilmington City Council speaks volumes for itself. An article in Star News from July 17, 1986 was titled "Wilmington Council Rejects South Africa Resolution," which at the time was introduced by Councilman Luther Jordan, asking his colleagues to join him in standing up against apartheid in South Africa. So I guess the blatant isolationism, the racism, the delusions of supremacy, that's just business as usual in your denial of our human rights. But now it's just blatantly anti-Palestinian and anti-Arab. I guess that's the new, like, we're cool to hate now. It's not a ceasefire resolution put forward by lovers of humanity that is divisive to this community. It is your silence in the face of genocidal complicity. It's tearing our community apart, limb from limb, much like your bombs are tearing apart the bodies of our children as we speak. And if I'm wrong about this, show me, not by speaking to me, but by using your relative positions of power, to not just call for a ceasefire, but to call for an arms embargo against Israel, as well as the appropriate divestment and sanctions. By doing that, you will not only be representing a majority of your constituents and a majority of Americans across all spectrums, you will also find yourself in alignment with international law, the International Court of Justice, and American law governing foreign military aid, also known as Leahy's Law. So this is yet another invitation to please wake up. And if you're unwilling to do that, your constituents have a right to know what makes you think that you have a right to murder our families with such impunity. I have one quote that I'll leave you with by Tad Hickey, an Irish political satirist. In the future, when some of the kids who managed to survive the bombs, the bullets, and mass starvation, who witnessed their schools, playgrounds, family members, and friends being obliterated right before their eyes, when they join the resistance, the West will shake its head and ponder, why do they love violence so much and hate us? Must be an envy of our freedoms. Can't possibly be the fact that we are slaughtering them and their families. Do better.
Next item of business is public hearings. Item PH1 is an ordinance directing the enforcement officer to vacate, close, and repair the non-residential structure at 255 North Front Street as a health and safety hazard and directing that a notice be placed thereon prohibiting its use or occupancy. At this time, I'd like to recognize our city manager, Mr. Caudle. Mr. Caudle.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and members of council. Brian Renner, our neighborhood compliance manager, will overview this item for us.
Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, Council. This evening we're going to talk about 255 North Front Street. This is a non-residential structure code case. It's a little different than you normally see from us, but it is the same process. So 255 North Front Street is approximately 70,000 square foot building built around in the early 1900s. It's currently vacant. Here we can see the property owners listed here. We do have Mr. Mahonigan here with us along with his attorney this evening. And just for a note, we did exclude Unit 100 from our code enforcement case, and I will show a breakdown of what the building looks like. So Unit 300 is the third floor, Unit 200 is the second floor. On the first floor, you have common areas, Unit 100, which was previously occupied by Waffle House, and then there's a Unit 101, and then there's also a basement unit. And this is just a schematic of what that looks like. So our case began on this property back in June of 2021 for this current case. Came from neighbors' complaints. The sections that we're talking about that were in violation were vacant at the time. Again, Unit 100 that was previously occupied by Waffle House was not included in our enforcement case. We took this to administrative structure code hearing back in March of 2022. We did have representatives from Waffle House at that hearing, and Mr. Simpson, who's one of the owners, submitted an answer in writing. We did issue an order to repair on April 11th, and that expired September 11th of 2022. We've had ongoing conversations with the owners about maintenance on this building. We have issued several citations, and there is a permit currently in review for repairs to the floor system. The findings of fact that was a result from that hearing, the tax value of that building is over $1 million. Our estimated cost to repair to bring the building up to a safe standard is $150,000, which is 13%, which is deteriorated by the non-residential structure code. These are the sections of the non-residential structure code that were in violation, and it's farther outlined within the findings of fact, which is included in this item. So now we'll just do some photos of the outside of the building and the inside of the building. Obviously we have some boarding issues. We have a lot of broken windows. We have some missing boards and other broken window panes. We did get a lot of complaints from adjacent building owners and occupants, and also from Waffle House about water intrusion in the building. Here's an example of that. This is in that front lobby from where water's actually coming in through where the windows would be above and creating a leaking issue, and we can see the deterioration on that window frame. This is the back side, which would be the exit from Unit 100 through the common area. This is up, which would be Unit 101. From the Nut Street side, that'd be the second floor. We have a lot of floor systems failing. This is underneath, which exits out to Nut Street, where employees would have taken their trash out through the back. This is the basement unit. It's filled with a lot of personal items from one of the owners in storage. What you see in this photo is the access door being secured by a ratchet strap. I know that they've had some people going down there that shouldn't have been going down there over the years, so they're trying to keep this secure. We do have a lot of open electrical issues down here too. It was recently painted. When we did our inspection back in August, they were painting this section. This is Unit 200, so the second floor, again, big holes in the floor system. We do have some water intrusion issues that are coming down into the second floor. This is that front side. We can see the deterioration around the windows and the broken window here. And that's where that leak that we saw in the front entryway is coming in through. Going up to the third floor, there is a lot of, or had been at the time of our inspection, a lot of birds in here. There was a lot of pigeon feces throughout mainly the third floor and also the second floor. And here we can see again where that's carrying down through that water intrusion that we saw in the front lobby. The floor systems, we can see here where the water is coming in. I believe there's a roof leak, and these barrels were holding a lot of that water that you saw carried down to the second floor. This is the excrement I was referring to, and this is the landing that goes up to the roof. So it's just showing the condition of those stairs. This is a view of the other side. This is the back side against Nut Street of that third floor. So what we're looking to do with this ordinance is, of course, encourage the property owner to make repairs to the building. Within this ordinance, we're looking to keep the building vacant so nobody can move into even Unit 100 because the common areas are so affected. And then until the building's in compliance, and we're looking at 180 days for a timeline for the owners to make repairs. If they do not make repairs within that time frame, we'll look at additional enforcement actions, which may include issuing additional citations, securing the windows, and doing sanitary cleanup. But the owners are here. They do have a plan in place of what they intend to do, and I'll defer to them to explain that. I'm here if there's any questions.
We have a question here, Councilmember
One quick
Waddell.
question.
Councilmember Waddell was.
Okay,
and then-
I'm sorry. Thanks, Mr. Renner. Just to clarify, so this is a condoed building, so each floor is owned by a separate owner, and then they're governed by a declaration of covenants?
It is a condoed building, correct. You have a few building owners in here. Most of them are Thomas Mahonigan in terms of registered agent. You have Adrian Holdings LLC, North Front Street Ventures LLC, who's Mr. Mahonigan. And then you have 255 North Front Street Condos, which is Thomas Simpson's the registered agent of that. And then you also have Unit 100, which is owned by Mr. Stringfellow and Mrs. Stringfellow. They were notified as parties in interest, but they were not subject to citations because their unit was not in violation.
Unit 100, the Waffle House unit, is the only one that's not subject to the violation here?
Correct. Our violations are on the basement unit, the second floor, third floor, and the common areas, and Unit 101.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem?
I noticed on like page 6 of my report that it said the staff recommendation is 90 days. Is that?
On the staff report, that must have been a typo on there. If you look at the actual ordinance that's in place, I believe it says 180 days on the proposed ordinance, so I apologize for that. That would have been my typo, but our recommendation is 180 days.
Okay, just want to clarify. Thank you.
Councilmember Watt, I'm sorry, go ahead. And that's it? Anybody else? Okay, thank you, sir. This time, I'd like to recognize the owners. please speak directly into the microphone so we can hear you better? Yeah, just bring it down.
I'm Dave Urban. I am attorney here in Wilmington, and I represent the owner, Adrian Holdings, as well as 255 North Condos Incorporated. I've got some documents to go through while I'm speaking. May I approach?
If you give them to the clerk, she'll share them with us. You pull that microphone down just a little bit more. Yeah, but, yeah, there you go. Thank you.
Story of my life, Mayor. I've been involved in this project for approximately 4 years, and I want to explain a couple different facets of what's going on here, and then ultimately to ask the council to agree with the planning director's recommendation. In September of 2018, as we all remember, this building was severely damaged during Hurricane Florence. Subsequent to that, when we were all trying to find a contractor, find help, get fixed, get back to life, contractors came from all over the country in here. Some wonderful people and helped us tremendously, and some were not. A contractor that was unlicensed came from California, made a deal to fix this building, and billed my clients well more than twice what they received from insurance. As a matter of fact, today they still claim that my clients owe them over $1 million for drying up the building. So this project has been in litigation for almost 4 years here in New Hanover County Superior Court. And that is how I became involved. For your edification, I was a developer and a contractor in Northern Virginia for 25 years, so I understand both sides of this. And we put this litigation to rest last week. What the litigation did was it tied up my client's capital and their ability to borrow money. During this time period, and I'll show the council, my clients did what they could to accommodate what they knew were problems here. The building was an eyesore to the extreme degree it was dangerous. They did spend money that they could allocate to fix what they could. And now they're able to do what they have always wanted to do. In the packet that I just gave you, and I'm not going to go in great detail, it's for your review, but behind tab number 1 are some of the owners' lists of the things that they have done to date. Replacing different parts of the structure that were safety related, and replacing windows, trying to keep it safe and functional for both the Waffle House and for the other business owners on the street. I know there's been complaints. I know there's birds there. I know there's some issues that they've had there. But they have worked with the staff and they have done what they could. Subsequent to the litigation winding down, my clients have been able to put financing in place, and behind tab number 2 are a sample of the documents that illustrate they have secured $1.5 million, 10 times what it's going to take to fix the violations in order to fund the renovation of this building and put the whole building back into service. This is slated and planned to be a mixed-use residential commercial facility, as is prevalent throughout not only this area but nationwide in urban environment. The funding is in place. And behind number 3, tab number 3, the design work for this is partially completed, and it's completed in the phases in which it needs to happen.
We have a question real quick. Councilmember Spears.
Yes.
Got 2 questions, one for Brian and one for you. So I see behind tab number 1, item number 7 for unsafe overhangs, air conditioners, and signs. It says all the exposed wires and conduits were removed or secured when the new double steel doors were installed. So, Brian, how recent are your pictures?
These photos are from August 13th, I believe. I can't see the date, but they're from August of this year. I think what they're referring to here is on the back side of the building on Nut Street, there used to be a walkway that previously attached to the garage that was hanging, and there were some issues with that. And I know that they did remove some of that a few years ago. So I think that could be what that's referencing.
Okay, then I'll ask you, sir. Is that what you were referencing, or?
I tell you what, that is my client's document, and if you can give me 2 minutes, I'll get out of your hair and be available for questions. But my client, Tom Monahan, the owner, the managing member of the corporation that owns the building, is here, and he will be able to answer specific technical questions like that.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you.
No, thank you. Just briefly, again, behind tab number 3 is the structural engineering design to replace all of those floor systems and the roof system. That's what's letting the water in, and you saw in the pictures just now, that has to happen. The manufacturer actually developed a 20-inch TJI joist specifically for this project that they're using in their national advertising. But we have applied for a building permit. It is in review. We did contact city inspections today, and they advised us of one further document they need, signed by the structural engineer. This material has been purchased. It is sitting at the supplier, ready to go as soon as we can get the building permit. Behind tab number 4 is a construction contract. There is a contract with the contractor ready to go. It is cost plus. There's a lot of things in the architectural design that still have yet to be determined. Electrical and mechanical engineering still has to take place. And then ultimately the interior space design will impact all of that. But as of today, we are ready to begin and get the items that concern this body underway. Behind tab number 5 is a copy of the floor system components and the drawings that have been ordered and are in at the supplier, 84 Lumber Company, ready for delivery and installation. Likewise, behind tab number 6 is the same with the window system that has not been delivered yet. There's a lot of windows. There's a lot of specialty windows, as you saw from the pictures. They take 8 weeks to manufacture, and we don't want to release them for order until they are ready and we know when they're going to be installed. But the point of me being here is to show some backup for what I'm saying and to hopefully help the council to understand this has been a long time. This has been an eyesore. But my clients want to and fully intend to get this building back into service and become a vital part of the downtown. And we ask that the council approve the planning director's recommendation. 6 months, we'll have it taken care of. I do not want to be back here talking to you guys again in 6 months.
Question, on tab number 4, which is your general contractor, it's Wilmington General Contractors LLC is the name of the company that is going to be doing this work?
That is a DBA, yes, but yes.
Is that the name of the company?
Yes.
It looks like they're based out of Greensboro, North Carolina.
Correct.
They've done work here in the area before? I mean, I personally just never had an experience.
It's a related entity of one of the owners.
One of the owners?
It is a licensed general contracting firm by North Carolina.
And you feel pretty confident with this general contractor? Obviously, the one out of California, what seems to be a disaster. But this person, or this entity here is?
It's related ownership with one of the owners, so
Okay,
they
so
have
one of the
every
owners.
reason to make it work. Yes, sir.
Okay, all right. And what you're sharing with us is that you can have this back in shape within 6 months,
We can have all of the violations,
taken care of?
yes. There's an exhaustive list, and you've probably seen it. The scope of the contract is built around specifically curing those violations and then moving forward with the interior finish work.
I know that the windows and the leaking that is taking place there has done a tremendous amount of, seems structural damage, even though I'm not a structural engineer. It just looks like a lot of structural damage. But then, have you all looked also at the roof?
Yes,
The roof is solid?
half of the roof. The front half of the roof has got to be removed and will be removed with new structure, new roofing, new flashings, new gutters, and total water control. These owners are putting $1.5 million in this building. We can't, we got to fix that first of all, and yet that is part of the plan.
Okay. So that's part of the contract, the general contractor's price, is
That's
to
correct.
replace that roof?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Mayor Pro Tem?
Yeah. I guess this is a question for staff. Brian, have you guys seen this? They're talking to Tony. Or, I could ask you, have you shared this with the staff? Have you shared this document with,
Just today,
just today?
just sent it to Mr. Renner today. Yes.
Okay, so he hadn't had a chance to, have you had a chance to look at it at all, or?
I did. Mr. Mahonigan sent me a first draft of what you have in terms of the remedial actions to date, number one, which I have looked at, and we discussed a couple things in there. And then I've also seen the structural drawings as well when they were submitted for the permit. He shared those with me, so I was aware of the work that was happening. So I'm aware of most of what's in this packet, yes.
Okay. And you didn't have any major questions, I guess?
No, and I've already worked out my singular primary question about the basement with Mr. Mahonigan already. So I think I appreciate the thoroughness of their plan, and I appreciate the efforts to resolve the situation.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Andrews? Councilmember Andrews?
This construction agreement, so Wilmington General Contractors and Adrian Holdings have the same address and phone number, and then the contract is signed by Thomas Monahan as both the contractor and the owner. So I've just never seen a construction contract where it's between the owner and himself.
Yeah, like I said, the contractor is a related owned entity by Mr. Monahan, who is the managing member of Adrian Holdings LLC, which is the majority owner of the building.
And I guess I'll ask the same question. Was Mr. Renner aware of this contract being?
This is the first I've seen this contract, was when it was provided me earlier today. I'm not a contract attorney, and nor do I claim to be one. I can't speak to anything regarding this contract. What we're looking at is the scope of work and the completion of this work.
And you're confident that it can be done in 180 days?
That is my recommendation. I think a strict timeline holds the owner accountable for completing that. It's council's discretion if you'd like to extend that or reduce that in any way.
Okay. Mr. Waddell?
Yeah, I understand that Mr. Monahan's the owner of Wilmington General Contractors LLC, which is a DBA for another general contracting company. Is that correct, in the state of North Carolina?
That is correct.
All right, and that is Adrian Homes LLC. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Out of Greensboro, and then he signed as the owner of, because he's the majority owner of the building. That's a contract for the entirety of the building. So is he able within the, I guess, the covenants and restrictions for that condo association able to sign on behalf of all the owners because they're making structural repairs to the entirety of the building? He manages the overall overarching entity, right?
That's correct. Okay. There are condominium units delineated in the condo plat that's recorded, but it's really one big open space. Mr. Monahan's entity owns 84% of the entirety of the building, as well as 84% share of the condominium association. So he has the authority under the documents to authorize all of this, yes.
Understand. Thank you.
Councilmember Spears.
Sir, I would often brag about being the fairest of these 7 council members when it comes to stuff like this. But this item today almost reminds me of the time when I was a teenager and I bought a gold chain in the parking lot of the mall. And the guy swore to me that it was real gold. He bit it, he put a lighter to it, and eventually it faded. It wasn't real. And so that's kind of how I'm feeling right now. This is very suspicious to me, because if Mr. Monahan had been a general contractor the entire time that he was in some capacity the owner of this building, he would use whatever resources that he had to maintain it, regardless of being involved in litigation or not. I know I would, instead of having my property devalue and start looking like this. And now, just out of the blue, he's a general contractor, and I don't know how long he's been a general contractor, but he's a general contractor, and he goes into a binding contract with himself where he's gonna pay himself 15% of over costs for the work that he's doing. And I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Doesn't happen too much, but I could be wrong. But this looks a little suspect, sir. But again, you're not the owner, so Mr. Monahan is here, right? So maybe
He is open for questions, but I will tell council, like I said, I was a developer and a contractor in Winchester, Virginia, which is about an hour west of D.C., for many years. And I had a construction arm, Urban Development Corporation, my last name, Urban. And I had a property arm, Urban Properties, LLC. And I would show up before the council and have the same exact discussions as we're having right now. It was just different versions of me doing different functions of what I was doing, and that's what we're doing here.
And then you left from being a developer and general contract to being a lawyer in Wilmington.
I thought it would be more fun, and most days it is.
It's exciting. It's looking really exciting for me right now. I'm loving it.
And Wilmington is much better than Northern Virginia, I will tell you that.
Okay, we'll see how much more fun we're going to have here shortly.
Yes, sir.
Councilman Ravenbar.
I just want to kind of piggyback on what Councilman Spears said, and I don't know any of you all. I know where the building is, been here all my life so far. But were I a general contractor, and that was part of my trade or part of my experience in life, I don't think I'd have let my building fall into that kind of repair, even though I was tied up with litigation, with money and what have you. You know, you could put visqueen on those windows, or you could put blue tarps. Wilmington's famous for blue tarps. I mean, something to protect the integrity of that building, not the floors, the interior, whatever, but to keep that intrusion coming in from the elements. That puzzles me. And in the meantime, it's not the same, but it's a lot like when we have these issues with a bad house in a good neighborhood, and it's been going on for 2 and 3 and 4 years like this has, and we give the people time to do it, and then they don't do it, and they come back and they want more time. In the meantime, the neighborhood is suffering because of that eyesore, and it hurts the values of their property, it affects their quality of life, and I look at this in very much the same way, very much the same way. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Anybody else? Okay. We're going to open up the public hearing here, what the public has to say about it, if anybody in the public wishes to speak. Okay. Thank you, sir. So at this time, I'm going to open up the public hearing and ask if anyone in the public wishes to speak on item PH1, if they'll come forward and state their name for the record.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, members of council. Christina Haley, President and CEO of Wilmington Downtown Incorporated. I am here to address an overall issue, not this particular property, because it seems that there's some inner workings happening and maybe some further conversations that need to be had between the city, the property owner, and attorney. However, I do want to address the overarching issue that we are seeing in our downtown district, using this as a focal point of what you're seeing today. Over the past year, we have seen a series of significant and concerning building issues within our downtown district. These events, while isolated, highlight the need for a more proactive approach to property maintenance, one that honors the rights of property owners while prioritizing the safety of the public and preservation of Wilmington's rich architectural history and protection of property values. I stand before you today with a deep respect for the responsibilities that property owners carry. Their investments shape the character and future of our city. We have had many such investors in our city, and I continue to see investments grow. However, as stewards of historic structures, there is also a shared responsibility to ensure that they are maintained in a way that projects not just their value, but the safety of its tenants and our community at large. These buildings are more than just private assets. They are public treasures that contribute to the identity and vitality of downtown Wilmington. I believe that a balanced solution can and must be found, one that respects property rights while also safeguarding public welfare. I urge City Council to work with our county to identify policies that strike this balance. Introducing measures that help identify potential risks before they become dangerous or costly disasters could benefit both an unknowing property owner and the safety of its tenants and general public. Proper policies can also keep property values from diminishing across the central business district. I also recognize that maintenance and repair, particularly of historic buildings, can be a costly undertaking. I understand that our current grant program, WDI's grant program, is pennies on the dollar compared to the significant investments that must be made. I will not only continue to leverage our current programs, but also as part of my commitment to supporting property owners, I am actively investigating grant programs and other incentives that could help alleviate some of the financial burdens associated with these types of repairs. I would also like to take this opportunity to commend the City of Wilmington's Code Enforcement Office for their diligent efforts in identifying commercial structures downtown that need attention and working with property owners to address potential issues. I support their focus in ensuring safety and preventing further deterioration of the properties that we have in our downtown district. I believe in the future of downtown Wilmington, and I am confident that under your leadership, we can find ways to protect our citizens, preserve our historic assets, and maintain and enhance property values across the district. I want to thank Brian Renner for his active approach to addressing property issues downtown. We have had many conversations, and I have been given a series of lists that I will go after for a facade improvement grant program in hopes to incentivize further investment in our downtown structures. I respect and appreciate your time. Thank you for your attention today.
Thank you. Anybody else? Madam Clerk, have you received any additional comments on record?
Yes, sir, I did. It came in from a Mr. Judson Stringfellow, 3515 Dovewood Drive, Charlotte, North Carolina. The end of 2020, my wife and I purchased Unit 100, most of the first floor of this building, which was already leased to Waffle House, as an income-producing investment. Prior to purchasing, we met with Tom Mahoney and his protege, Tom Simpson, who assured us the rest of the building would be renovated soon, showing us some floor plans. Obviously, much to our disappointment, that has not occurred, and now Waffle House has closed, citing the lack of building renovation and associated issues as the reason. So in addition to the loss of rental income, we are now concerned about upkeep of that vacant unit in a building, most of which has deteriorated. and it is unlikely we can secure a new tenant until a leased building structure facade renovation work is completed. It is in everyone's best interest that at least the structure of the building, including the exterior walls and roof and the egress and ingress, first floor common areas be renovated in an expedient manner. As such, we do not support any action which could delay this work and propose that council, as may be within your authority, set achievable but hard deadlines for work progress milestones with Adrian Holdings. Example, window replacement, roof and exterior wall repairs be completed by X date, interior stairs and floor structure work be completed by Y date, etc. And failure to complete such will result in either large fines or forfeiture of ownership of the building. Thank you for your consideration of the above. Judson Stringfellow. Thank you.
Thank you. Brian, that comment that was just shared with us by the city clerk, and I was going to ask of this of council, and this obviously, which I guess to Councilmember Rivenbark and Councilmember Spears' point, I mean, this is a pretty significant building in our downtown. It abuts our sidewalks, public sidewalks, and I know this was in litigation for quite some time, what the attorney has shared with us, but I do find it hard that even under litigation circumstances, you don't secure the building to a degree that you don't have the water intrusion that we've seen here and the damage, the considerable damage has been done to this building. I guess my question is first of all, I think this is such an important matter because it abuts the public sidewalk, and there's so many people that walk by this building. In regards to what the person has shared with the clerk, is keeping a timeline where you're coming back to council to report to us at some point in time before the 180 days, like within a month or 2 months, as to the progress that is being done on this particular building. Because I want it done within the 6-month period. I believe they've shared with us that they want it done within that 6-month period. But to keep everybody honest here and to keep everybody on schedule, I would like to have some sort of a report that comes back to council, whether it be you come back to it and report us in public, or you give it to us in some kind of a staff report so that we know where we are in the process. Because, you know, in respect to construction, there's so many things that can happen. Somebody didn't show up, somebody did work improperly, somebody's got an issue with somebody, somebody's going to take somebody to court, and I just want to make certain that we're on schedule to have these things done. Now going to Mrs. Haley's point, you know, we've had 4 buildings. We've had this ongoing issue with I call it the old Murkison building, where we've had the scaffolding around there for, it seems like years now. We've got this building. We've had the facade collapse on Gray Street. We've had another interior collapse of a building on Princess. And there is a concern out there that some of these buildings or some of the owners of these buildings are being derelict in maintaining them. And these are historic old buildings, just like the historic district. You've got to spend money in these older structures to maintain them, bring them up to code and what have you. How much work have you folks been doing out there in the short period of time that this has kind of erupted in the last, you know, what can you tell me about what you're seeing out there?
Yeah, so I guess first I'll start with happy to come back with progress reports or submit some sort of progress report and work with the property owners to achieve that. I think they outlined in their item number 1 timeline within there to an extent, you know, temporary repairs within 30 days, those types of things. So happy to do that. To your second point, what my staff has been doing is we've been doing what we do in every neighborhood, which is look for violations and then notify the owner of those violations. We've issued several notices to property owners just in the last few weeks. We've also issued courtesy notices just for minor issues that we observed. But the biggest thing I can do and say is if you're a tenant of a commercial building and the owner's not making repairs, notify our office so we can perform an inspection. We've had instances where there's a major problem and we're never made aware of it until after it's come to a head. So if we have, a leaking roof, we need to know about that.
Good. All right. Councilman Ravamar?
One of the things that I'd like to take away from this tonight is not let it happen again when we see a bill. I mean, the facade collapsing, the interior of a store collapsing, those are things that they happen, and you really didn't get a heads up that they were getting ready to happen. But this was so visible that we could see front and back, and it's not our fault, but there's got to be a mechanism where we can see this happening, and after we've had a conversation or a sit-down meeting with the owners, and it doesn't get fixed, to protect this valuable asset, as Christine so aptly put it, there needs to be a vehicle whereby the city can go ahead and get in there and secure the windows, if nothing else, and put a blue tarp on it to keep that from happening, and put a lien against the property if you have to do that. And I don't know if the attorney would tell us that our process needs to get approval from somebody above us, or we can do it ourselves. But hopefully it wouldn't happen a lot, but in this particular case it did, and I've been seeing that thing for a long time, and by doing what I just said, we could have prevented a lot of interior damage.
And Councilman, just for clarification, that is our process. That is the process you described, is what we're here to do, and is to encourage the owner to make those repairs. And if they don't, we'll discuss next steps on that.
Mr. Waddell?
I'm in agreement with what the mayor and Councilman Rivenbark and Ms. Haley were putting forward, some sort of a framework that I think gives us a little more teeth, specifically to the commercial historic portion of our downtown. It's very important that we kind of maintain a more proactive approach. Not that Mr. Renner's not out there and his staff aren't doing that, but something to give a little more oversight to really the beating heart of Wilmington and the surrounding area. So I think that's something that we can all look into. But specific to this issue, this is the first one I've seen, I think, Mr. Renner, that involves a commercial building, certainly one that involves one in the historic district. Typically, they're vacant, properties, and it's different, residential nature. But day 181, nothing's been done. Let's say worst case scenario, day 181, nothing's been done. What happens?
Aside from issuing additional civil penalties to the property owner, we would begin contracting boarding up the windows, and then probably doing an assessment for sanitary cleanup within the building. And then we will make additional assessments from there, whether we talk about referral to the city attorney's office or other actions.
So we would board the windows up. That would be the extent of the construction work that the city would do on their behalf. We wouldn't be demolishing them, but we would board the windows up. I think I see the city attorney wiggling. No? All right.
So with this ordinance, you're giving Mr. Renner and the department the ability that after that 180 days is over to take whatever actions are necessary to secure the building. And when he's saying making assessments, that could mean, do we need to go in and do some repairs on our own and do assessments on, and issue liens on the building? What do we need to do to make it secure? And so there's a whole list of legal things that we can do at that point.
I think I may be running down a rabbit trail here, but let's say 181 days, not that Mr. Monahan but just looking for down the road other properties that may have this issue. Hopefully we don't, but would this be within the city's authority to go, put new windows in to the historic district specs and basically lien the property for that work? Not advocating we do that. I'm just asking a question.
Generally speaking,
I see the city manager wiggling now. So.
Generally speaking, we do only what we need to do to make it secure, not to bring it back up
Right.
to what you would want to sell it for or put it on the market for, but just to make it safe and secure and meet the minimum standards.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Joyner?
So I was going to ask some of the questions that have just been answered about the logistics of this, because I think we have four options. A, do nothing. B, do what's been recommended by staff. C, move the date up. D, move the date back. So I would recommend, based on the conversation that I'm hearing up here and based on my own personal opinions, that we change it to a much sooner timeline. 30, 60, 90 days is what I would propose we do. I'm going to throw out 90 just to get the conversation started, but I think that that's probably the timeline that gives them a little bit of leeway to actually get the work in production, gives us some assurance, since it's folks who are from out of town who people who've been on this council for quite a while have said they're not familiar with and don't know the work product of, and gives staff the ability to start getting the ball rolling if it's not hit, and they can come back with a recommendation in 90 days.
Also, in response to you, Councilmember Waddell, just so that you know, the city and county have an interlocal agreement on inspections. And so our staff and county inspection staff have been working out what this really looks like, especially with these types of properties. So I just wanted to let you know we have been in discussions, making sure that our processes and referral systems are working well together.
Mayor Pro Tem.
I would agree with Councilman Joyner to move it up, to 90 days. And I do like the idea of you still checking them on every 30 days, because it's amazing how all of this just shows up like today, So, but I'm in favor of that as well.
Okay.
One more. Yeah. I tell you, I'm not in the contracting business, but I kind of work around it. 6 months is not an entirely long time for the level of repairs that it's going to take that's outlined in their book here. I would not be opposed to the 90 days if we could add some wording in there that that we would not guarantee an additional 90 days, but that we would certainly look at it favorably. Because 6 months is a blink of an eye when it comes to a job like this. I don't want them to, I certainly want to get it done in a timely fashion, but I'm okay with 180 days.
Councilmember Spears.
Yeah, I think we go through this almost every single time, and we are often informed by staff that we can't get benchmark updates. So here lately, I don't hate to agree with you, Charlie. I agree with you that I'm gonna go with the 180, but if you pay attention to these meetings, if the repairs are not done in the 180 days, I'll probably display a different type of behavior towards this agenda item. I want to be fair, but I still think there's a little bit of a stench with this thing, but 90 days, I don't think you could accomplish all the things that need to be done in a building that's this big and has so many things to do. And we can't get an update. We cannot get an update in 90 days that would say, hey, we're at this benchmark and give us this or that and whatever, because, you said it, multiple meetings. They could do whatever or not do anything in 90 days, and then the process would just be prolonged. So we would just be right back here again.
Yeah, and I want to be clear that if council passes this ordinance tonight, it becomes into my office's hands, and it would not come back before council, but we are going to give you those 30-day updates, at least in writing, with the progress that's being made on this. So I just wanted to be clear with that, is that we will give you those updates, but if this is passed at whatever timeline, it would be on my office to make those administrative decisions after that expiration.
Okay. Councilmember Joyner.
So I don't have a problem with the 180 days. The reason that I was hammering down on our 4 options is because I agree that we do have this conversation every time. And we have a recommendation from staff, and I think every time that it's happened since I've been on council, we have followed the recommendation from staff. We have the applicant who says we consent to the recommendation. And then we had I think, a fruitful conversation about some needs that we need to turn our attention to in the downtown business district and in the CBD. So I'm fine with it being 180 days. I also am fine with us being a little bit more aggressive with it, but in any case, I appreciate staff recommendation, and you continue to do a great job for us. Thank you.
Councilmember Andrews?
Yeah, I just have a concern that there's an owner in this building that isn't part of this action. Is that owner still going to be able to lease out their property to another tenant now that Waffle House is no longer under lease there? You know, we heard from that owner saying that the condition of the building has been a concern. Are they still going to be able to continue business in the part that they own?
I don't believe the owner of that unit has any intention to rent the building out in its current condition. As you saw in the photos, the main entry and the common area of this building is unsafe. So what we would do if we needed to secure this building would probably be secure the front door and not allow any access. Even though Unit 100 was not included in our violations, the common areas were, and you have to access the common areas to access that unit. So I assume that there'd be some lawyers that might consider things on that, but ultimately the access to the building itself is unsafe.
So that would be a concern of mine too, with the, you know, with the length of time that this person is basically out of business, even though, you know, through no fault of their own, and that they're not even a part of this action, but they're going to be put out of business too. So,
Mayor Pro Tem?
Yeah, Brian, question. Okay, you're saying in 30 days, you're going to give us like an update, okay? When you give us that update, if the update says nothing has been done in 30 days, then what do we do?
So the ordinance does not prevent me from issuing further citations. As a practice, what we do during this period of time granted by council for compliance, we generally do not issue citations, but it is within our authority. So say if we don't see any progress in a 30-day period, we could issue additional civil penalties against the owner.
Okay, and then if 60 days come along, and suppose nothing else happens, then we issue more citations.
That would likely be the next avenue, would be citations. Even, for example, this 180 days expires and nothing is done, that would really open us up to taking other actions that would incur liens against the building, which could be used for interim foreclosure or other avenues of litigation. Realistically, what our intention is for the owner to repair this building and to give them adequate time for them to repair this building. And what we do is we work to motivate and encourage the owner and provide what sort of encouragement we can based on the ordinance and the statute.
Okay.
Yeah, we would not, for example, be able to demolish this building at 180 days. That's not what this is.
Right.
This is encourage the owner to make repairs. It sounds like the owner is more than willing to make repairs, and that's what our goal is.
Okay, all right. I'm good with the 180 then.
Yeah, can we have the attorney? You, sir?
Yes, sir.
So you've heard this debate up here, and obviously you've come in here with good faith and showed us where you've obtained, have documentation to get the loan to make the repairs. Obviously, we want these things done as quickly as possible. Had some commentary about making it 90 days instead of the 180 days. You want to tell us you're still fine with the 180, or could you do 90?
The problem is this: the construction is sequential. It takes 8 to 10 weeks to get these windows, and now we're at our 90 days. Now they're getting them ordered, but there's structural work that has to be done before the windows can be put in, and there's nowhere to store the windows on site, which is why we haven't ordered them already. So 180 days is doable. 180 days is not a lot of time, but it is doable the way we got it sequenced. But 90 days is just not possible because we can't get the work done in time to get the materials ordered, in time to get them done in sequence.
But I understood that you had some of the materials already ordered, or you had already obtained some of the materials, so the windows were not part of the original part.
Correct. All of there's $100,000+ worth of structural framing. All of that structural framing that we looked at in those
Yeah.
pictures that concern, that's all coming out.
Okay.
And it's all going back.
So the first phase of this is to restructure the windows in this building structurally, and then place the windows in place. Is that correct?
Yeah.
I guess what I'm looking for is your construction phase as to what are you attacking first? What are you implementing first? So when Mr. Renner is sharing information with us, we know that what you have shared with us coincides, and everybody, we're on the same page here. So is the structural component of the structural damage that's been done here, fixing that first? The windows come in next? The windows are already been ordered, or when they will be ordered?
Yeah.
I guess that's what I'm looking for, is because I know with supply chains and all kinds of stuff, and I don't know where you're getting the windows from and what kind of windows they are, and have they been, are they, code approved and stuff of that nature. I would imagine that they are. But, we have different laws in different states where you order them from and what have you. So can you kind of give me a little bit more of an understanding of how this process works and what phases and what you are going to do?
Yeah, I'll give you an overview. Now, Mr. Monahan is here, and he's also been heavily involved. But the roof obviously has to come back and go on before we put anything finished other than just structural framing inside. So there's demolition that has to be done of all of that stuff, general cleanup and making it safe, first off. And then we'll come in and do the structural framing, all of that, new subfloor, new staircase, all of that has to be done. And once that's all tied together, the windows should get here about the same time. I think if on that, what I had in my packet there, it's $117,000, I believe, which it's not a huge amount of windows in that building. And then there's other things that can be done with the building exterior at the same time. There is going to be some coordination too. There's going to have to be a permit here to close the sidewalk when it's necessary to get that work done and to move material actually through that front, which some of that can only go in that way.
Sure.
As well as the structural building permits with the city. And, all that's, it's working and it will work, but it just all takes a little bit of time. I don't, if they can get it done any sooner, that's great, but I think that safely, all of the code-related compliance issues be done in 180 days.
Okay, so the roof is the first part, which is the smart part. Get the roof fixed first, then go through the process of all the structural components within the building that need to be gutted and fixed. It's next, and then the windows as they come in. Is that correct?
That's correct. And then there's new doors and things that are, brand new hollow metal doors to secure the facility.
Sure.
And have the common areas and the exterior safe for transit.
Because all of this has to obviously also be worked with New Hanover County Building Inspections, because they handle all the construction inspections and permitting primarily. I know that we do zoning and other issues, but they primarily are the lead on this.
That's correct.
And you have already been in touch with them and working through that process.
Been applied for. We were at the permit office today. There's one more document they need, and we believe that'll be forthcoming.
And those documents will be shared with Mr. Renner?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Okay. Mr. Waddell.
So item 5 in this plan that you provided us with has a material list from 84 Lumber, the amount of $102,909.34, and the cover page for item 5 is ordered floor system. So this floor system has already been ordered from 84 Lumber and paid for. It's just waiting at their warehouse.
It's here in town.
Oh, great. Okay.
Ready for delivery, yeah.
And then, so I guess that's my follow-up question to that is with the financing that's in place, has that financing been closed on, or y'all are waiting to see the outcome of
Yes.
tonight?
No, it was closed last week.
Okay.
I know it looks like it all came all at the same time, and it kind of did. But
Every once in
it
a while it
wasn't-
happens, yeah.
It really wasn't for this meeting. It was more contingent upon the litigation than it was the meeting.
Okay, so y'all do have some pieces, the pieces are in place. I mean, it looks like to me, I'm a general contractor, it looks like the pieces to me are in place to get rolling, so.
Yeah.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay. If there are no other questions from council, I'm going to close the public hearing and ask for the wishes of council in respect to the ordinance. We have a motion to approve by Councilmember Rivenbark, second by Councilmember Joyner. Any further discussion? All in favor of that motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That item passes unanimously on first reading. Is there a motion to waive second reading? We have a motion made by Councilmember Joyner, second by Mayor Pro Tem Barnett. Discussion. All in favor of that motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The item passes unanimously on first as well as second reading. And to reiterate again, Mr. Renner, you will be keeping council informed every 30 days in respect to the progress of the building.
Correct.
Okay, thank you, sir. That brings us to our next item of business, which is item PH2, which is an ordinance for the closing of an unimproved portion of the South 23rd Street right-of-way located south of Gibson Avenue. And at this time, I'd like to recognize City Manager, Mr. Cottle. Mr. Cottle.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We've had a request from the applicant that this item be postponed until November the 19th meeting. So if you'd be so kind as to make a motion to continue it to that time and date,
Okay.
we'd be appreciative.
Okay, we have a motion to approve by Councilmember Rivenbark to November the 19th, second by Councilmember Spears. Any further discussion? All in favor of that motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The item passes unanimously. That brings us to our next item, which is item P8 on the City of Wilmington's Consolidated Annual Performance and Evaluation Report. At this time, I recognize City Manager again, Mr. Cottle.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Rachel Schuler, our Neighborhood and Services Director, will come forward and introduce this item.
And I will also note that there will be no action taken, so we'll go from there.
Thank you, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, members of council. This is the public hearing for the Consolidated Annual Performance and Evaluation Report, the CAPER, which is required by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. This report summarizes the accomplishments and progress towards our consolidated plan goals over the past fiscal year. Our Community Development and Housing Manager, Gilbert Combs, who joined our team this March, will be giving the presentation, but I will be available if there are any questions. With that, I will turn it over to Mr. Combs.
Thank you, Ms. Schuler. And thank you, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and members of council. Again, this is the public hearing for the Consolidated Annual Performance and Evaluation Report, or CAPER for short, as required by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, or HUD. The City of Wilmington is an entitlement community, meaning the city receives Community Development Block Grant Funds, CDBG, or Home Investment Partnerships Program Funds, or HOME. This report is a reflection both of the last fiscal year and the progress made in the Consolidated Plan and the fiscal year 24 Annual Action Plan. Ahead, we will look at just some highlights coming out of the Housing and Neighborhood Services Department, some figures from the CAPER, and the progress made on goals from the 5-year Consolidated Plan and Annual Action Plan, and finally, some challenges related to housing affordability in Wilmington. In the past fiscal year, your investment in the Human Services Program supported 25 different nonprofit agencies impacting over 18,000 individuals. Funding from the 1 cent dedication helped further support nearly 300 multifamily units in the Starway Village project. Shown on the left of the screen, on the right of the screen, excuse me. Over 240 individuals attended homebuyer education classes, providing them with critical information related to home ownership, financial readiness, and home maintenance. In 2023, the Housing Counseling Program was launched, and nearly 100 individuals have taken part in one-on-one sessions with HUD-certified housing counselors. The Healthy Homes Program, with a performance period from the May of 2023 to November of 2026, completed 6 Healthy Homes projects in fiscal year 24. Currently, they are on track to complete over 11 additional projects, focusing on the 8 principles of a healthy home. Federal funding spent in fiscal year 24 leveraged about 60 cents in private funds per federal dollar spent. Home funds saw a stronger ratio, mostly due to supporting with down payment assistance. CDBG dollars this year played a role in home acquisition and rehabilitations through primarily amortized loans, with less need for secondary funding. Breaking the Human Services grant down by federal and general funds, you all can see that federal funds saw about $25 per $1 in CDBG or home funds spent. What staff really wants to highlight here is the $127 in leverage for every $1 spent of general fund money for the Human Services Grant. This is a tremendous return on the investment that this council has made in the community. Here, our balance for fiscal year '24 from the three primary sources of funding, CDBG, home, and the city's 1 cent dedication. Here, showing the diverse group that we serve with in-house and partner agency programs. And here, looking at the services provided by the Housing and Neighborhood Services Department and outside agencies as a breakdown of income category. As shown, the vast majority of those given services fall in the low to extremely low income categories. Here, just showing the breakdown of overall expenditure by funding source. And here, breakdown of expenditure by activity. In 2022, this council approved a 5-year plan identifying goals and strategies for how the city would utilize federal entitlement funds and the investment of general fund dollars to address affordable housing in the community. This spring, Ms. Schuler presented the annual action plan for fiscal year '25. The previous year's annual action plan timeframe ended this June, resulting in this document that is being presented tonight, the CAPER. This is the second year of the reporting for the 5-year consolidated plan. Ahead, staff will break down the goals found in the consolidated plan and the progress made overall and in the past fiscal year. Here, the goal of increasing affordable housing options. These goals are met with in-house programs funded by CDBG or HOME, which are federal dollars allocated to us as an entitlement community, as well as the dedicated 1 cent on the property tax rate, this council's investment in the community. And as you can see, the bars show the goal, the total consolidated plan goal progress, and fiscal year '24 progress. At year 2 of these goals, a reasonable benchmark is a set one of approximately 40% completion. Here we see the number of rental units constructed and homeowner housing added has already surpassed the overall goal. Homeowner housing rehabilitated is near the 40% mark, and the direct financial assistance is about 50% complete. Here, the goal of supporting human services programs has provided benefits to over 27,000 people overall, and has helped to create tremendous positive impact to the community. Homeless persons provided shelter is at nearly 65%. The last goal category was added in, jobs created and retained was added in the '23-24 annual action plan. In the CAPER data that was gathered, employment and training were combined as a question. So the likelihood that this number is tracking or far exceeds exists. Overall, a number of 586 was provided for both training and employment, for only 3 awarded programs. Staff are working to update the questionnaires to ensure this value is measured for next year's CAPER. And the far right, maintaining affordable housing. As a reminder, the 5 focus areas for the Human Services Program are youth violence, economic prosperity, safe haven for vulnerable residents, preventing housing displacement, and addressing food insecurity by increasing access to healthy, nutritious food. Here, the city has surpassed the first 2 goals and is about 25% complete on the goal to increase homeownership. On February 9th of 2023, the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development published the Affirmatively Furthering Fair Housing Rule. Large focuses of this rule are the barriers families face obtaining or keeping housing in well-resourced, low-poverty areas that provide access to opportunity and community assets. Additionally, barriers related to continued disinvestment in housing and community assets in areas that are not well-resourced. This is important here because on this slide, the goals are to reduce housing discrimination and increase homeownership in part of the city by expanding funding sources for affordable housing developments. In 2023, the Community Development and Housing Division introduced a housing counseling program. This program has been tremendous in not only setting up potential home buyers for success, but also providing useful information about finances and home maintenance. These programs are supported by members of the department who are HUD certified. While great strides are being made in terms of making housing affordable, the images before you from the Cape Fear Realtors August report shows an increase in median sales price and in new listings, paired with an increase in pending sales. Based on this information, the market is not slowing, nor is the increase in housing prices slowing. Housing production lags behind demand in part due to interest rates, limited new construction, and an increasing population. As a result, pre-qualified home buyers struggle to compete with their higher income buyers for housing in a market where most houses are being sold above asking price. So who benefits? The programs are supporting some of our most vulnerable residents. Staff are thankful for the continued support from this council and the federal government that we have been able to support thousands of residents. In the years to come, we hope to continue building off the successes with your investments in building a better city every day. On behalf of Community Development and Housing, we thank you for your continued support. Public comments tonight and during the public input period will be included in the report, and my contact is before you. Thank you for your investment in Wilmington, and this concludes my presentation.
Okay, is there any questions for staff? Okay, Councilmember Andrews?
I just wanted to say thank you so much for this report. It was really well done. The only concern I had was keeping up with all the acronyms. I know government loves acronyms, and most times you did spell them out before you used them, but I think a glossary would be very useful for anybody reading this.
Yes, ma'am.
Anybody else? Okay,
Thank you.
This time, open up the public hearing and ask if anybody in the public wishes to speak on item PH3, if they'll just come forward.
Good evening, Council. My name is Logan Secord at 2900 Newtown Drive, Wilmington. Before I get started, I just want to say I'm very grateful that all of you are here. Staff, we're all here safe. I don't know about you, but I was not expecting that rain event yesterday, and I know most of us weren't. So the fact that we're all here safe and sound is something that I'm very grateful for. So, housing is a very complex issue. We're here talking about affordable housing, and I want to just narrow down to a very small, specific segment of the affordable housing, and that is the Wilmington density incentives. As you are all aware, we have an incentive to increase density for developers. That is 10% of units at or below 80% of area median housing income, AMHI. So I want to discuss the effectiveness of that policy.
Excuse me, could you state your name for the record so we can?
Yes, Logan Secord.
Logan Secord. Okay, thank you.
So let's start with stating the obvious. Housing prices have increased and rental prices have increased drastically. If you do the math between 2020 and 2024, we're a little bit better than we were a couple years ago. Prices have somewhat leveled out, but we're still just shy of a 33% increase compared to where we were when the pandemic hit and we all survived the inflation. You will all be very familiar with that table on the bottom right. Based on that 2022 housing assessment, the city of Wilmington needed about 6,600 units, and again, tying to that 80% note, 4,800, so 4,794 of those units, so 5/6 of those units were in those first four columns, right? So sub 80% area median housing income. So now we've got that set up. What is AMHI? As Councilmember Andrews said, this is complex. It's a lot of units. Who is 80% covered by 80% AMHI? Per the previous slide, that's $68,000 per year. We are a tourist-centric city. We depend on that, so we must acknowledge our service workers. We must acknowledge our public service workers, the policemen, the firefighters. We must acknowledge the people responsible for our children, the high school teachers, the blue-collar workers, such as the manufacturing technicians at Corning. Even the median income, U.S. Census median income from 2020 still shows below $68,000. The nurses at Novant Health are just skimming by, but based on the actual shortage, I know that even some of them are still across the bridge and are commuting, which again is a danger to our group. So when we're talking about this, when we're talking about workforce housing, and we're setting policies in order to support workforce housing, we need to make sure the policies align with the on-the-ground reality of where our workforce is aligning. So, first problem to solve is supply. The density incentive wants us to get a lot of units in here because we've had a lot of demand, and the only way to counter prices going up from increased demand is to increase supply. And as Mr. Combs has shown, we've done a phenomenal job at that. I know you guys deal with a lot of NIMBY. I am grateful for you weathering that storm. Thank you. I know it can be difficult at times, but 3,000 units coming online this year, that is going to help that. However, if we can extrapolate that all of those units, or at least most of them, were using this, we're talking about only the bottom 10% of the units hitting that 80% AMHI. That bottom 10% is still out of reach for the average worker. It is covering a need. The wider county need, which you'll see in the bottom right, between 81% and 120% AMHI, is about 3,000 units. So there is a need in the wider area for those units. But for the workforce housing themselves, we're still not addressing these problems. So supply is helping, but it is not the only factor. There are other programs that are being done. There's rental assistance programs. The county obviously has grant programs. I watched the webinar, and you can see in the bottom right some of the various programs and complexes that are being built. But as you can see, we're not winning this fight. 426 units out of a need of just shy of 4,000 units means we're doing, I will counter, better than most places, but drowning is still drowning, and we are still in this battle. There have been other great programs I want to highlight, as Mr. Combs did, Starway Village. I'm very excited, as you all saw last month, about Kerr Avenue. Gap financing is helping. But again, we're talking about taking out 10% of the problem of thousands of units. To acknowledge the elephant in the room, supply does not necessarily mean lower rates. The saying goes, any publicity is good publicity. I would say that this is not so much of good publicity. Some of the largest developers in the country have been shown in a collusion lawsuit, and we got the publicity of being specifically named in that lawsuit. If we have an open market and competition, renters can go to various different developments, but you'll see in that third bullet those very well-known names, Barclay, City Block, Headwaters at Autumn Hall. If they're all colluding, then the supply will not resolve the affordability issues. Now, I know this is something new. I'm curious if there is anything happening in the background that Wilmington is looking into this, but if we are coming in expecting supply to resolve our issues, and we are having corrupt, large-scale developers making sure that that doesn't happen, we're not going to solve the problem. So, the very unpopular recommendation that I would put forth is that we modify the density incentives in the Unified Development Ordinance, that 20% of units should be at or below 80% AMHI, and 10% of units should be at or below 60% AMHI. So 20% total, you're increasing the 80% rule to 20%, and half of those should be at 60%. Also recognizing, that we need to continue to support gap financing, especially in the world of high interest rates. Hopefully tomorrow that helps. And recognize the need for sale options alongside rentals. Most of these apartment complexes are sales, and as a millennial, I am a unicorn as a homeowner, and I know a lot of people would like to join that. Some objections that I'm sure already went in everybody's mind. If we put additional restrictions on housing development, developers will not come. If we increase supply, they will lower prices anyway. However, that's a little bit of circular logic. If increasing supply is going to automatically lower prices, then ensuring that lower prices are reached is not a burden. Second, as we've seen, supply should decrease price provided there is not price collusion. And finally, we have a supply of housing units. You've seen that. We are doing an excellent job, but as you saw in the previous presentation and in mine, we have units. We need affordable units. So, the foundation of a city is the working class. Let us ensure that they may live here. Let the worker who makes our food, the police officer who protects us, the nurse who saves our lives, the teacher who educates our children, and the craftsmen who build and maintain our homes have the opportunity to live here. Thank you.
Spears. Dylan, can you go back 2, maybe 3 slides? Right, the one before that, right? No, after, I'm sorry. Go ahead 2 slides now, I think. Right there, there we go. So, first, I want to stay right here, focus right here. But I gotta ask, who are you, sir? I just gotta ask. Now, last time you came, I was like, they paid this guy to come with this information. But now you're pretty interesting. You got facts, you got presentations, you got numbers. I mean, but who are you? What do you do?
So if you're upset,
I'm not upset.
No, I'm kidding. You can. I'm going to throw Pastor Mike Ashcraft under the bus because he gave a sermon about 3 months ago, and he said, "Use what you have and leverage it for the community."
Okay.
To be of service to your community. In my personal life and my 8 to 5, I do utility scale solar development. So I know zoning, I know NIMBY, I know development ordinances. I've helped craft ordinances. So I've got familiarity. That is my skill set. And so how do I leverage that? Well, we have an affordability problem. Also, I'm interested in sustainability, focusing on that, stormwater resilience. If I was a doctor, I would be doing wellness checks. If I was a craftsman, I'd be lending my time. But this is what I kind of fell into for the job. So I figured I'd use it to try and serve my community well.
Well, just let me say kudos to you. You are somewhat of a unicorn because we don't normally see someone, I'll speak for myself, I don't normally see someone who looks like you that would come and advocate just out of the blue. And being a white man, I'll just say it, advocating for housing affordability in Wilmington. So kudos to you, I like that. So, and also your recommendation here. So, for the density incentive modifications, are you saying that this for every development that comes before this council, this should be like the benchmark or what we should be looking for everything, or just affordable?
So in order to increase the number of units per acre for certain mixed-use developments and for upgrading to certain residentials, you can go past those limits prescribed, and the planning staff can describe it, but you can go from, say, like 17 to 36 units per acre. But in order to do that, you have to have 10% of those units.
Yeah. I know that.
So That same rule I would modify to, okay, if you want to increase the number of units per acre, it's not 10% at 80% AMHI, it's 20% at or below 80% AMHI. Half of that has to be at or below 60%. I would say, as you can see, that we've got plenty of units and now we need effectively all affordable units, but I recognize the reality that placing too stringent of requirements saying we're only going to look for affordable housing is probably not going to be, something that is tenable.
One more question. So how long have you been watching? Because, this is, when this comes before this council, this is what I push. So I often push for a longer period of time, and I often push for more units. So it's a good idea, I know someone who thinks like that, so I really like it. But, yeah.
I know it's something that is difficult, and I was planning on not bringing this up until, after November, but I'm getting involved with Cape Fear Housing Coalition, and they put out, does anybody want to speak at this? And so I said, well, I'm interested as a citizen, so I saw the opportunity when it would be fresh on your minds to do it. So I recognize that this is a challenging proposal to put forward. I recognize that, there's probably a lot of opposition to something like this. However, we have to recognize that there is a problem. As you saw in the past, presentation, that we're getting some solutions. We're getting small, Kerr Avenue and others, but I don't think this problem is going away. I don't think there's going to be, any saving grace coming at higher levels, and so we have to be a little bit stern with the few areas we're developing left to say, all right, we really do need to help our community, because I just worry. I mean, we're not talking about, just fast food workers. I was talking to somebody at the Cape Fear Housing Coalition, and she told me in 2017, 2018, there was a freeze that shut down the bridge, and Novant Hospital had a critical staffing shortage. Why did Novant Hospital have a critical staffing shortage? Well, because there were no nurses here. Well, why are there no nurses here? Because they live on the other side of the bridge because they can't afford to live here. You're telling me a nurse can't afford to live here? I mean, if you're a service worker, I recognize that. But if you're somebody with a master's degree, if you're somebody who's a firefighter or a policeman, I don't want the response time being 20 minutes. I need the people, if there's a fire, or God forbid something safety, or the people who are taking care of our children when we have a surprise 18-inch rainfall event, I'd like them to live here. So I think it's something that is uncomfortable but necessary.
Can I ask you a question? You've been doing a lot of studies on this, and just out of curiosity, with the Cape Fear Housing Coalition, the other three counties that kind of make up this MSA, Pender, Brunswick, and New Hanover, and the cities, the 19 cities in Brunswick, the one city in Pender, you have 4 cities in New Hanover. How many of those have the kind of similar earmark of a property tax rate for affordable housing?
I honestly couldn't tell you. I'm just getting and learning. I attended the information meeting with Cape Fear Housing. I'm meeting with the county commissioners. I'm asking a lot of questions because I recognize that this is a complex subject. So I'm still doing my homework just as one guy in his free time who does have a day job, and trying to learn and see how I can contribute.
Thank you. Does our staff know that question, answer to that question? Out of the 19 cities in Brunswick County, the one city in Pender, the 3 counties, how many other municipalities or counties are setting a set of their property tax rate to go toward affordable housing?
We are the only ones.
Thank you.
New Hanover County has an allocation, but it's not based on the tax rate.
Thank you very much. Okay, anybody else? Okay. Madam Clerk, have you received any additional information?
No, sir, I have not.
Okay. Any other questions from council? I will now close the public hearing. Thank you. That brings us to the next item of business, which is ordinances. Item 01 is an ordinance making supplemental appropriation of $54,669 in program income to the Special Purpose Fund to support the city's housing programs. This time I'd like to recognize our city manager, Mr. Caudle. Mr. Caudle.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Excuse me, Rachel Schuler, our Housing and Neighborhood Services Director, will overview this item as well.
Thank you, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, members of council. This is an ordinance making supplemental appropriation of $54,669 in program income to the Special Purpose Fund to support our city's housing programs. Our city housing programs receive program income in a variety of ways. This evening is based off of our origination fees from our first mortgages, as well as the HOP certified broker fees. Those are special fees that are paid by our HOP certified brokers who are licensed real estate agents specialized in our HOP program. Those funds are allocated to support the housing programs through outreach, education. Our homebuyer education is a full-day class that is required to participate in our program, so we do provide lunch and paid parking. So that is what those funds would be used, again, outreach, marketing materials, and education. And that's all. Staff is recommending approval. Thank you.
Are there any questions of staff? Okay. I'm going to ask for the wishes of council in respect to the ordinance. We have a motion to approve by Councilmember Spears, second by Councilmember Rivenbark. Any further discussion? All in favor of that motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item passes unanimously on first reading. Is there a motion to waive second reading? Motion made by Mayor Pro Tem Barnett, second by Councilmember Spears. Discussion. All in favor of that motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item passes unanimously on first as well as second reading. That brings us to our next item, which is item 02A, which is an ordinance making supplemental appropriations to the Special Purpose Fund in the amount of $400,000 from the Federal Highway Administration and $50,000 from the North Carolina Department of Transportation for the Safe Streets and Roads for All grant. And then we have the item 02B, which is the resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into agreements with the Federal Highway Administration and North Carolina Department of Transportation for the Safe Streets and Roads for All grant for the Wilmington Urban Area Metropolitan Planning Organization to complete a comprehensive safety action plan. This time I'd like to recognize our city manager, Mr. Caudle. Mr. Caudle.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Everybody's favorite WMPO Executive Director, Mr. Kozlowski, will overview this item for us.
Welcome, Special K.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor, members of council. It's been a while. The Wilmington MPO applied for and was awarded $400,000 from the United States Department of Transportation Safe Streets and Roads for All grant program to complete a comprehensive safety action plan. This grant is funded 80% by the federal government, 20% by local funds. We were able to secure $50,000 from the North Carolina Department of Transportation towards this effort, and the remaining $50,000 was included in the FY24 MPO budget. The ordinance appropriates the funding, and the resolution authorizes the manager to enter into the agreements with the Federal Highway Administration and NCDOT. Once a comprehensive safety action plan is complete, the MPO's members would then be able to apply for implementation funds through the Safe Streets for All grant program. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have regarding this.
Are there any questions for Mr. Kozlowski? Okay. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Okay, what is, in respect to the ordinance, what are the wishes of council? We have a motion to approve by Councilmember Waddell, second by Councilmember Rivenbark. Any further discussion? All in favor of that motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That item passes unanimously on first reading. Is there a motion to waive second reading? Motion made by Councilmember Waddell, second by Mayor Pro Tem Barnett. Discussion. All in favor of that motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That item passes unanimously on first as well as second reading. Now let's go to the resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into the agreement. What are the wishes of council in respect to the resolution? We have a motion to approve by Mayor Pro Tem Barnett, second by Councilmember Spears. Discussion. All in favor of that motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The item passes unanimously. That brings us to our next item of business, which is item 03A, which is a resolution amending the and the directing of the expenditure of opioid settlement funds, and then item 03B, which is the ordinance which we'll take 2 votes on, authorizing additional spending authority related to opioid settlement funds in the amount of $140,000 to be provided to New Hanover County. Again, I'd like to recognize the City Manager, Mr. Caudle. Mr. Caudle.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Jennifer Moretti, our Finance Director, will overview this item for us.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, City Council members. There are 2 items before you this evening for approval. The first is a resolution that has 2 requested items within it. One item is approval to amend 2 previous resolutions that were brought before council to delegate the opioid settlement funds to the various programs with the county. With the city receiving settlement funds directly and then transferring these funds over to the county becomes a subrecipient to the city for these funds. This requires the city to specifically identify how the county is to spend the city's funds. The amendment does that by allocating the funds to one program for reporting purposes and allows the city to allocate funding to our police department for the replacement of naloxone. This one program is MedNorth, due to their programming involving community distribution of naloxone, which is a requirement in order for us to give it to our police department. This is one of the many programs agreed upon by the joint committees and included in the previous resolution approved by council. The second item in this resolution is approval for the city to authorize the Department of Justice to send the city's settlement funding directly to the county instead of coming to the city first. This will avoid the duplication of reporting efforts required by receiving our funds first and then giving them to the county. The city is expecting to receive about $1.4 million over an 18-year period, while the county is expected to receive $33.8 million over the 18 years. Several cities included with the settlement have already directed their funds to go to their respective counties. Cary, Gastonia, and Raleigh have always directed their opioid settlement funds to their respective counties. Charlotte and Concord began directing their funds starting with the fiscal year 2024. The city and county can continue our joint committees identifying the programming the funding is going towards and receiving the annual reporting of these programs as intended. If approved, the city will need to send a letter to the Department of Justice by December to have funds directed to the county at the start of the next fiscal year, July 1, 2025. The second item for approval tonight is an ordinance that will appropriate any funding the city receives this year in opioid settlement funding, as well as any estimated interest earned on these funds still held by the city, to transfer to the county. As long as the city is holding $1 of these funds, the city is required to continue reporting on how these funds are spent. Staff is requesting approval of both items tonight, and I'll answer any questions that I can for you.
Councilmember Joyner.
I just have a quick comment. Thank you for this presentation, and this comment is a little bit off topic from what you brought up, but it's very pertinent to opioid settlement funds. So a couple of weeks ago, we had a joint meeting with our counterparts on the county commission. There were several news stories that talked about our strategic plan on unhoused neighbors in our community. And we talked a little bit at that meeting, but we had talked a lot more at previous meetings about how mental health and substance use disorder were going to play an important part in that strategy. And we received an email, because I think the entire council was copied on it. We received a number of emails, but we had one in particular that stood out to me. And it essentially said, don't spend another dollar of my tax money on addiction. Don't spend another dollar of my tax money helping people who have a substance use disorder because they don't want to get help. To the constituent who wrote us that email, I have a fundamental disagreement with you about whether or not local government has a role to play in that and whether we have a responsibility to allocate public funds to that. And we can have that disagreement respectfully, and I'd be happy to have a conversation with you about it. But looking at this resolution tonight, looking at these monies tonight, let's make it abundantly clear. This is not the taxpayers' money. This is the pharmacy's money. This is the pharmacy benefits manager's money. This is the overprescribing doctor's money, who are paying settlements because for years and years and years, they preyed upon people who had a substance use disorder to the point where people were and still are dying in our community. So I will happily spend that money to help folks in our community who have a substance use disorder. Thank you.
Very well said. Here, here. Anybody else? Okay. What are the wishes of council in respect to the resolution? We have a motion to approve by Mayor Pro Tem Barnett, second by Councilmember Ravenbark. Discussion. All in favor of that motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item passes unanimously on the resolution side. In respect to the item 03B, what are the wishes of council? We have a motion to approve by Councilmember Ravenbark, second by Councilmember Andrews. Discussion. All in favor of that motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item passes unanimously on first reading. Is there a motion to waive second reading? Motion made by Councilmember Waddell, second by Mayor Pro Tem Barnett. Discussion. All in favor of that motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item passes unanimously on first as well as second reading. That brings us to our next item of business, which is item 04A, which is an ordinance appropriating funds for demolition of 305 and 315 Chestnut Street, which is the ordinance. And then item 04B is the resolution authorizing the award of a contract to Four Seasons Demolition Incorporated in the amount of $583,000 for the professional demolition services involving city-owned structures located at 305 and 315 Chestnut Street. At this time, I'd like to recognize our city manager, Mr. Caudle. Mr. Caudle.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Aubrey Parsley, our Economic Development Director, will review this item for us.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, members of council. I just have a few slides to review with you all tonight related to this topic that was just read, which is the demolition of 305 and 315 Chestnut Street, both appropriating the funds to do so as well as awarding the key contract to get that work done. First, a quick overview of these properties. 305 Chestnut Street, 315 and 319 Chestnut Street is what you see here on the map. It's directly across the street from us here at Thalian Hall. The zoning is CBD. In aggregate, all this land is 1.65 acres. There's just under 50,000 gross square feet of building on the property, and these properties date back to either the late 50s or late 80s, depending on which structure we're speaking to. Here's just some quick photos of the buildings, just for the benefit of the public, in case they hadn't seen these before. We are talking about, again, 305 Chestnut Street and 315 Chestnut Street. More here on that in a minute, why we're including both of those. The actions that we're seeking from council tonight is, again, twofold: appropriating the funds to get this demolition work done. We're asking for $583,000 for the demolition contract. Excuse my math there, just typo. $10,000 would go toward engineering services, and then since we are looking at a demolition project downtown that involves a little bit more than traditional demolition because we have to do some things to stabilize 3rd Street as we get this work done, we're also asking for a bit of contingency on this project, so the appropriation request is for $650,000 for this reason, which is why you see a slight deviation from the resolution on the number there. The goal of doing this work is stated here on the slide. These properties are surplus properties, and we want to get this work done to both expedite and enhance the value we receive from the surplus sale, and get this property ready for redevelopment that much quicker by doing this work ourselves. Traditionally, we've had a higher degree of success, a higher probability of success on our properties when we have taken the active approach of solving the issues with the property and setting it up for the highest and best use ourselves. That's especially pertinent to us as a local unit of government because our disposition procedures are such that it is hard to negotiate sort of issues that come up after a bid process has already played out. So one of the things we went into this thinking about was, at what point would the cost of demolition services make sense or not make sense? And we did an appraisal that looked at a couple different types of valuations. We looked at the land value of the property as well as the as-is value of the property. And the land value of the property contemplated there being no building on there. That number minus the as-is value was over $600,000. So what that told me was that we would be net even if we spent a little bit over $600,000 taking the building down in terms of value that we would expect to receive from doing so. And again, given that we're a local unit of government and how regimented our disposition procedures are, it really helps us to resolve these issues up front so that we can get under contract and have that closing be that much more seamless as the due diligence is carried out by the other party. So process on this, a quick review. We did have some fits and starts with procuring these demolition services. We put out our original bid request in June of 2024, only to retract that a few weeks into that process. The reason we did so is during our contractor walkthrough, we got some questions that made us realize that we really needed to account for stabilizing 3rd Street, and we had not done that in the bid package, and we wanted to go procure some engineering services to very much prescribe how the contractor would make sure we did not lose a lane on our 3rd Street thoroughfare there. So once we figured that out and got a stabilization design stamped by an engineer, we went back out to RFP in August, and those results came in at the end of August. This is the visual representation of the scope of work. Won't cover it all. I do want to point out just a few things. The first is that we are going to do absolutely everything we can to preserve the trees and the plaza there on the southwest corner of the property. We intend to keep all the impervious surfaces, including the foundations on some of the buildings, to allow for that much more of a seamless stormwater permit process for the hopefully soon-to-be prospective buyer of the property, whoever that may be. We are also going to have to deal with, and back to the stabilization on 3rd Street, the basement in that 2-story annex building that you see right alongside 3rd Street. You wouldn't think it to look at the building, but there is a 19-foot deep basement underneath that 2-story annex structure. And to, again, allow for a quicker timeline toward redevelopment and solve for that issue that, likely no other buyer would make use of that basement or structure, we decided to pull that basement out, backfill it with clean fill, and compact it. And during that process, that requires us to stabilize 3rd Street there, which will be done in accordance to this impossible-to-read engineering design. I just put it on here to assure both you and the public that we have had this engineered and that this construction project will ensure that the contractor will need to ensure that these design standards are being met to stabilize 3rd Street as this work gets done. So a quick review of the solicitation process and selection process. We reposted an RFP this time since we didn't want price to be the sole determinant of the contractor we picked, given the more technical nature of the work with 3rd Street and the location of being downtown, difficulty of the site. We wanted to take some other factors into consideration. We posted an RFP. We reached out to all the folks that we know on staff that are in this line of work. We held a mandatory walkthrough meeting on August 8th and had 11 firms show up. Submittals were due on August 29th. We had then convened a 4-member selection committee. So the submittals were independently scored and then tallied, and we did receive 5 proposals in all. The scoring criteria you see here on the slide, we had just 30% of the scoring criteria tied to price. We definitely wanted to see plenty of prior successes on similar projects, especially given the location of this particular demolition project. We wanted to see good qualifications from the team members, a very good understanding of the scope of work, and we also had the MWBE commitment in there at 10% as well. So the result of the solicitation, you see in the title of the resolution, Four Seasons Demolition Incorporated was the highest scoring submittal that we received and are thus recommending them for selection for the bulk of this work to take down these structures located at 305 and potentially 315 Chestnut Street. I say potentially because we included that in the proposal as an alt add. You saw in your consent agenda tonight, there's still some work to do to take some of our IT network infrastructure out of that building. The thought is we'll be able to do so here in time to also add the demolition of 315 to the project. So those two are both contemplated in that number you see in your resolution and in the ordinance up for your approval tonight. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
So you know, you were talking about this 19, there's a 19-foot depth under that annex building.
Yes.
And Councilman Reinbarger shared with me that I think, was a bomb shelter. I mean, not a bomb, yeah, bomb shelter. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. For us,
It looks it
for us that
going
were
down
born in
there.
the 50s and 60s, we remember that kind of stuff. But anyway, what I wanted to share with you was, I know that when we did 3rd Street back in 2010, we found a shelter that was under the street that came out from Harold Wells's insurance company that was under 3rd Street, that had extended out into 3rd Street. And I guess maybe the old county courthouse is the same way. And of course, now you've got this building. Do you know how far out is intruding? Do we know that yet? Because it was a considerable excavation to fix that or to get that done.
We have reference points for where we believed the closest basement wall to be to 3rd Street, but we are planning to stabilize 3rd Street driving pile 50 feet deep, and we are not sure what's going to be down there once we get past, you know, that first 20 feet or so. Being downtown as old as it is, you just almost never know what you're going to find. Hopefully we find nothing. We don't have to use any contingency funds. We return some of this excess back to the general fund, but we just wanted a little bit in there to deal with that type of occurrence, which hopefully, again, we do not find.
Okay. Okay. And we found those here too. Okay. Anybody else? Okay. Okay. Thank you, sir. All right,
Thank you.
what wishes the council in respect to the ordinance appropriating the funds for the demolition of 305, 315? We have a motion to approve by Councilman Reinbarg, second by Councilmember Waddell. Further discussion? All in favor of that motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item passes unanimously on first reading. Is there a motion to waive second reading? Motion made by Mayor Pro Tem Barnett, second by Councilmember Andrews. Discussion. All in favor of that motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item passes unanimously on first as well as second reading. Now to item 04B, which is the resolution authorizing the award of a contract to Four Seasons Demolition. What are the wishes of council in respect to that? And we have a motion to approve by Councilmember Waddell, second by Councilmember Andrews. Discussion. All in favor of that motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item passes unanimously. That brings us to our next item of business, which is item 05, which is an ordinance amending Article 7, Division 3, Section 18-615B and B1 of the Land Development Code to change the membership of the City of Wilmington Board of Adjustment by adding 2 additional alternate members. And at this time, I'd like to recognize our City Attorney, Meredith Everhart. Ms. Everhart?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and members of council. This item comes to you as a recommendation from Council's Appointments Committee. It is a recommendation to increase the membership of the Board of Adjustment from 2 alternates to 4, so that they will be better able to complete their business. There have been some incidents where they didn't have enough people to have a quorum, or they only had the required number there, and there would need to be a unanimous vote on each item in order for anything to pass, and so this would be to address that. There will also be another item that will come before you related to this that will have to do with mandatory attendance for Board of Commission members and alternates, but that will be, Board of Adjustment members and alternates, but that has to go through the Board of Adjustment first, and so they will vote on that and then come back to you. So this is just the membership of the alternates now.
Okay, very good. Any questions, comments? Okay. What are the wishes of council in respect to the ordinance? We have a motion to approve by Councilmember Rivenbark, second by Councilmember Spears. All in favor of that motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item passes unanimously on first reading. Is there a motion to waive second reading? Motion made by Councilmember Andrews, second by Councilmember Spears. Discussion. All in favor of that motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item passes unanimously on first as well as second reading. That brings us to our next item of business, which is our resolutions. We have item R1, which is a resolution authorizing the city manager to amend the agreement with Thalian Hall Center for the Performing Arts Incorporated for the management of Thalian Hall. At this time, I'd like to recognize our city manager, Mr. Cottle. Mr. Cottle.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Amy Beatty, our Parks and Recreation Director, will overview this item.
Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and City Council. I've got a very short presentation to accompany this item, so I'll get right to it. The Thalian Center for the Performing Arts has been managing operations of the building that we're in, as well as leading preservation and restoration efforts on behalf of the city and its citizens for over 60 years. And Thalian is the most utilized historic theater in the nation, with over 700 events occurring in 2023. They actually have a waiting list for events, so they're at capacity. And in 2023, over 90,000 guests attended events at the hall, 30% of whom were from out of town. In addition to the events, Thalian also serves as the home for 43 regional organizations and nonprofits, and takes a very active role in providing theater experiences for youth in New Hanover County. Over 150,000 youth in our county have experienced free of charge performances at Thalian Hall, and that includes performances for every first and second grader in public schools in New Hanover County every year. The hall has withstood multiple demolition threats in 1925, 1939, and 1946, and each time the wrecking ball was near, Wilmington citizens rallied for the preservation of the building. A major renovation occurred in 1975, which restored the building to its mid-century appearance and sparked a dramatic increase in use. The Thalian Center for the Performing Arts led a master plan for expansion and renovation in 1983, and Wilmington citizens supported a $1.7 million bond. A capital campaign raised $3 million, and the city was a major partner in efforts in reopening that occurred in March of 1990. Since 2010, Thalian Center for Performing Arts has raised over $4.6 million in private donations and grant funds to support operations, the educational programming, free school shows, preservation, renovation, and maintenance efforts. In 2011, with support of the city, Thalian Center for the Performing Arts established a $1 per ticket preservation fee, and since implementation, $493,000 of improvements have been made using this fund, including renovation of the Ruth and Bucky Stein Theater, the Marley Dance Floor, installation of a new fire curtain for the main stage, fireproof storage for archives, and updating the dressing rooms. On May 16, 2023, the city ratified an agreement with the Thalian Center for Performing Arts to manage the hall for a period of 3 years, with the option to extend the agreement for 2 12-month terms for a total of 5 years. Relocation of the city's offices led the staff to the Skyline Center, led staff to develop an amendment to the agreement that was ratified earlier this year that would mainly shift responsibility there that are currently under the city right now to Thalian Center for the Performing Arts, including grounds maintenance, janitorial services, security, fire protection, termite control, refuse collection, and utilities. The amendment also establishes an expectation that Thalian will become increasingly responsible for maintenance and capital improvements, including the establishment beginning in 2026 of a capital fee going forward. In exchange, the city will add $40,000 a year for operations fee to the agreement and adjust the management fee upward of around $9,000 a year to adjust for those utilities that Thalian will now be responsible for. As well, under the amendment, Thalian will also have the ability to rent out the vacated office spaces to other arts-oriented organizations. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Any questions of Amy? Mr. Rombach?
I think this is a good solution or process. We've got people over here now that I have, not that I didn't have faith in the last group, but Shane Fernando and his group, I have great respect and confidence in his leadership ability. This building has been used for everything in the world. This used to be where planning and zoning and the community development were. I sat right over by that window at Jim Bonser's desk and sat on lawyer cardboard boxes. That was the only place to have a plan review in the 80s. And the boxes collapsed. I mean, it was crazy. And to sit here and look at this, it's like it's science fiction, that it's this pretty. So we'll miss it. Hopefully one day soon we'll be missing it, but it's a great thing, and I know that they're excited about absorbing the space and doing greater things. So.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay. What are the wishes of council in respect to the resolution? We have a motion approved by Councilman Ravenbach, second by Councilmember Andrews. Any further discussion? All in favor of that motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Item passes unanimously. That brings us to our next item of business, which is our reports. Item RP1, Council's Appointments Committee for Boards and Commissions, and Councilmember Charlie Ravenbach, who is the chairman of that committee, will be giving us a report. Mr. Ravenbach?
Yes, pull this up. The Appointments Committee met on, I don't know exactly what day it was we met. It was about 2 weeks ago, made these recommendations, and September the 3rd. I serve on that committee as the chair. Also on that committee with me is Councilmember Luke Waddell and Councilmember Celette Andrews. These following suggestions from the Appointments Committee are as follows. The Golf Course Advisory Committee, reappoint Richard King with a term to expire 10/9/27. Parks and Recreation Advisory Board, appoint Joe Pendry with a term to expire 8/12/2027. On our Sister City Commission, we appoint Catherine Schultz to fill a vacancy, an at-large vacancy, with a term to expire 8/16/25. And on our Wilmington Tree Commission, appoint Terry Parham to fill a vacancy as a city resident with a term to expire 6/18/27, and appoint Aaron Hamer to fill a vacancy, an at-large vacancy with a term to expire 6/18/25. I respectfully present these for your.
We have a motion to approve by Councilmember Andrews. We have a second to that. We have a second to that by Councilmember Waddell. Any further discussion? All in favor of that motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The item passes unanimously, and this concludes the regular agenda. Are there any items to be brought forward by our city attorney?
No, sir.
City manager?
No, sir.
Madam Clerk? Mr. Joyner? Mr. Waddell? Mayor Pro Tem?
Yeah, a personal note. Yesterday, my son Clifford, named after me, had his 33rd birthday. And I want to wish him a happy birthday. And one of the things I said to him was that he's given us a lot of tears of joy. And so I'm just excited about all of the things that he's doing as a man and as a husband. And I'm just really proud of you, Junior Bob. So, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Rumbar?
We had one of our biblical rainfalls, and here in the city, there are a lot of places over the history of those of us that have been here for a long time have seen horrible flooding issues, and with this council and the councils before us, the city of Wilmington has undertaken some great strides in stormwater prevention, runoff, what have you. It's expensive, but boy, it sure does help when we compare ourselves with some of the surrounding communities and surrounding counties who have chosen not to go that route, and they're paying the price today.
Very well said. Ms. Andrews?
Happy Constitution Day. I was honored to present the proclamation from the mayor at the Arboretum this afternoon, and very, very nice ceremony. And in the spirit of government of the people and by the people and for the people, I wanted to thank Jared Patterson and the corporate affairs team for publishing the boards and commissions opening on the website, and also putting it out in the newsletter. I got a lot of responses from citizens saying that they were glad to see that, so thank you very much.
Thank you. Spears?
Yes, sir. I just got back in. I was kind of scared yesterday flying back into town. I was watching social media and the news and everything. I almost thought I wasn't going to make it back home. I got a little homesick. I was ready to come back home. But a weekend of first, but one of the highlights, or two of the highlights of my week was I went to the Smithsonian's African American Museum of History. Wow, just amazing. And I was there looking for the exhibit on Seabreeze and some other stuff. But man, I was just blown away by so much information and so much history. It's just, I would recommend everybody to go to that. And the other highlight was I went to Baltimore to watch my Raiders play. First time in my life watching my team in the stadium. But on the way there, I was catching the train in Union Station, and an elderly gentleman, I guess his blood sugar was low, and he passed out. But, you know, and here we were, another guy and I said we just so happened to be standing in line, and he had on his Raiders shirt, I had on my Raiders jersey. But when this guy passed out, it's like we just all jumped into action, you know, to help him. And he was trying to stand up, and I mean, he was pretty much out of it, and he was kind of being defiant. But I say all that to say that being a good person is an innate thing. So it takes a lot of energy to be a bad person or to be a hateful person. So I would just say that, you know, to anybody that is being hateful or mean or whatever, you're exerting a lot of energy, because it's way easier to be helpful and to be a good person. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, sir. And finally, I just want to say, on behalf of the city, I just want to say thank you to all the first responders that were engaged yesterday in some horrific flooding that happened not only in New Hanover County, but also in Brunswick County and the surrounding region. You know, and this, guys, comes back around to where governments come together and work together for the betterment of the entire community. We had calls yesterday from the governor's office, from our state representatives in Raleigh, from the White House, all of our local governments coming together, working together. We had our Swift boat and our crews down at Carolina Beach helping in some of the evacuation efforts there. And I just want to say that during this political season, when we see the vitriol, we see all the issues that we see on social media, and we see how the media gins us all up, it shows the best of humanity. It shows that we are all, first of all, neighbors, that we care about each other. We don't care what political parties we belong to, but we're here to help one another in times of emergencies. This is what government does best. And it showed yesterday when all of us came together, worked together to help our fellow citizens in very dire situations. And I just want to say thank you. That's the way it's supposed to be. Nobody asked any question as to which party you belong to or who you were. We all came to the rescue of each other, and I just want to say thank you on behalf of all of the citizens of this community. With that, thank you for taking an interest in your government. We stand adjourned. Thank you.